Picture this. Prince William walks into a quiet country room holding 3 old brass keys and a worn leather folder stamped with a dead queen's crest. 20 minutes later, he walks out, and Camilla's family has just lost a 12,000-acre estate they'd spent 15 years believing was already theirs. No shouting, no screaming match, no dramatic blow-up. Just a lawyer flipping open that folder and reading a single sentence out loud. One sentence that turned every promise King Charles ever made about that house into empty air. The place was never his to hand over, it never belonged to Camilla's side. And here's the part that still gives me chills. The deadliest thing in that folder wasn't the legal wording, it was a signature. A signature from 1999 that everyone in that room had completely forgotten existed. Before we dig into how the whole thing came crashing down, do me a favor, if you love these deep dives into royal power plays and the secret paperwork behind them, tap subscribe and stick with me to the very end, because the twist at the finish is genuinely unforgettable. Now let's walk through that morning, because the details are strange, and the closer you look, the more the official version starts feeling like a cover story for something far more calculated. Here's the setting. Camilla's family showed up at Ravensmere expecting nothing more than a formality. No fight, no confrontation, just signing some papers. For 15 straight years, this estate had been treated like a done deal. 12,000 acres, a grand Jacobean manor, 42 cottages, working farms, a private lake, and paintings the public has literally never seen. This wasn't some cozy little getaway cabin. This was a legacy, the kind of place that shapes a family's identity for generations, and the staff already acted like Camilla's side owned it. They'd nicknamed one upstairs room, Mr. Parker Bowles's study. That very morning, someone placed fresh flowers in it. Nobody ordered them. That's just what you do when you think new owners are moving in. By nightfall, those flowers were gone, and that tiny detail tells you everything. This was never a negotiation, it was an execution. William rolled in at 8:46 a.m., no motorcade, no press, just one dark car through the eastern gates, with 2 solicitors stepping out behind him carrying matching black cases. But here's where it gets odd. William didn't walk through the front door where his family sat waiting. He went around the whole house, across the wet gravel courtyard, and slipped in through the old estate office, the room that's held the land records since Queen Victoria's day. Now ask yourself, why would the future king dodge the drawing room entirely and march straight to the archives? Because he didn't come for a family chat, he came to present evidence. He walked in through the exact door where the proof was buried, and if anyone had clocked that in the moment, they'd have known the ending before it started. Camilla heard he was on the grounds around 9 and figured he wanted to talk renovations. Honestly, fair guess. 2 roofs were leaking, the east wing needed work, and there'd been quiet chats about fixing up cottages for her extended family. Charles had apparently cheered all of it on. And that word, encouraged, matters enormously, because in royal families, private promises get made in rooms where nobody ever asks for proof, and proof is the only thing that ends up counting. The phrase Charles reportedly kept repeating was just 5 words. You'll always have Ravensmere. Sounds like security, sounds like a promise, but sweet words turn dangerous the second someone starts spending real money on them, and that's exactly what happened. Plans got drawn up, furniture got measured. One relative eyed the southern paddocks for their horses. Camilla's son got the wine cellar tour and was told which bottles were house bottles. Imagine hearing that year after year, being treated like the heir every single time you drove through the gates. Then imagine William sliding a 6-page legal opinion across the table and calmly saying, "None of you were ever beneficiaries." That one line doesn't just change the present, it rewrites the entire past. Every promise suddenly means something else. Every claimed room now belongs to someone unknown. And the giant question hanging in the air was simple. If not them, then who? William let that silence stretch. He didn't say, "You lost the estate." He didn't say, "I'm taking it back." Both of those would admit it was once theirs. Instead, he framed it so it was crystal clear it was never theirs. Not now, not ever. 15 years of wine tastings and furniture fittings and a room called the study, all erased as legally meaningless. That's not rage. Rage says you betrayed me. William said, there was never anything here for you, and that's so much harder to recover from. Camilla walked in after 9:20. Charles arrived minutes later, already looking rattled. It wasn't that William had kept the meeting secret, it was the folder. William sat beside the lead solicitor, holding a faded leather folder, and Charles recognized the crest instantly. It belonged to the Queen Mother, his own grandmother. Witnesses say the color just drained from his face, because Charles knew exactly what it meant when his son shows up clutching his grandmother's private papers. It meant the past had just walked back into the room. And what was inside rewrote the whole story of Ravensmere. The place was never Charles's property. It wasn't crown land either. It was locked inside a private family settlement, a legal structure amended 3 separate times. The First Amendment protected the land. The Second protected the house. But the Third protected the thing nobody bothered to check, the succession clause. Who inherits next? Charles only ever held what's called a life interest. He could live there, maintain it, collect farm income, but he could never permanently move it outside the bloodline. Not by promise, not by letter, not by royal command. He had the keys for life, but zero say over who got the estate after him. He'd promised it to Camilla's family for 15 years, while never once having the power to do so. Camilla's daughter asked the obvious thing: why can't the king just decide? The solicitor's answer froze the room. This decision was locked away before the marriage, not after. Before. Somebody saw this exact conflict coming and slammed the door shut before anyone knew a door existed. Everyone assumed it was Queen Elizabeth, but William never said her name, because it wasn't her. The amendment was signed in 1999, 3 years before the Queen Mother died, 6 years before Charles even married Camilla. And the second signature? Princess Margaret. If you know Margaret, you know she was sharp, suspicious, and fiercely protective of family property. The archives show she feared Ravensmere could get married into a family the original owner never intended. She didn't accuse anyone. The wording did it for her. No spouse, child of a spouse, or descendant unrelated by blood to King George VI may obtain permanent title, controlling interest, or beneficial ownership. It never names Camilla's kids. It didn't have to. In 1999, before the marriage even existed, they were already locked out. 2 women looked at a family that hadn't formed yet and sealed the door. That's not a fight, that's foresight with a pen. And here's the human weight under all that cold legal language. It's easy to call a bloodline clause snobbery, but I don't buy that. Estates like this aren't owned by whoever lives there. Trustees hold them for a line. You're a caretaker, not an owner. You pass it, whole, to the blood children. Margaret wasn't just being possessive, she was guarding the rights of children not yet born. George, Charlotte, and Louis, a generation she'd never meet. That's what William was really protecting. It wasn't abstract to him. It was his kid's birthright, sitting in a binder, while someone else measured their rooms for furniture. Charles leaned toward the solicitor and muttered something like, "That's what I believed, but I was never told." William looked at him and said the line that ended it. "Your signature acknowledged it." Then a photocopy hit the table, Charles's own signature, November 1999. He flipped it over, reread the date, and said nothing for several seconds. But here's where I genuinely feel for Charles. His 1999 acknowledgement never spelled out, "This blocks your future wife's family." Ravensmere was buried in a 6-property financial restructuring, mentioned twice, once by a dry parcel number, and once by its 1936 era name. So maybe he signed without grasping it, or maybe he understood perfectly and told himself he'd change it later. Because a clause can be amended, right? He just needed the remaining trustees to agree. And the one trustee who mattered was William. That's why William entered through the records room. He wasn't a guest, he was the gate, and Charles had already tested that gate. Months earlier, an aide floated a continuity arrangement. William asked one question: who gets the beneficial interest? Who actually owns the value? The answer came back: Camilla's children and grandchildren, through a new trust. William wrote one word in the margin: rejected. But Charles pushed again, and this one was clever. Camilla's family wouldn't own it. The estate stays in the settlement, but they get a 99-year lease for £1 a year. On paper, nothing leaves the bloodline. William's kids own it, but can't touch it for a century. Genius, right? Except Margaret and the Queen Mother had already blocked that too. Any lease past 21 years needed unanimous trustee approval. William rejected that one as well. Those 2 women in 1999 didn't just write a rule, they pre-blocked every workaround a future king would try. Direct transfer, blocked. Trust, blocked. Long lease disguised as rent, blocked. They left a countermove waiting in a folder for 26 years. That should have ended it. 2 no's. But 3 weeks later, contractors showed up, not for the leaking roofs, but for the old nursery corridor, to convert it into family apartments. Nobody told William. Big mistake, because William helps manage the maintenance account that paid for it. An $18,400 survey filed between roof repairs and farm drainage, described as adapting for future occupancy. Future occupancy by whom? He pulled every invoice: custom shelving, a temperature-controlled wine cellar, 2 remodeled resident bathrooms, and the delivery name on the order? Parker Bowles. The family who couldn't legally own the house was having built-in furniture delivered to it. Talk is deniable, money isn't. And once trust funds got spent on non-beneficiaries, William didn't just have a grievance, he had a legal duty to act. They didn't just tip their hand, they handed him an obligation. Then came the real twist. The 4th page named the next qualified heir after Charles. Everyone assumed William. But 9 days earlier, quietly, William had renounced his own claim, and nobody in that room knew. Why fight so hard, then walk away? Because renouncing wasn't surrender, it was surgical. It triggered the succession chain. Harry was never included. Anne had already declined years earlier in a sealed statement. Andrew was next, and you could see Charles's stomach drop, but a conduct clause, stripping anyone who abandons royal duties, knocked him straight out. That left one man, Prince Edward, the quiet one. Nobody in that room had thought of him all morning. And Edward, notified weeks earlier, had accepted on one condition: he'd never live there. Instead, the farms, cottages, and income would fund veterans, bereaved military families, and kids aging out of care, with the manor housing families of service members in long-term treatment. He gave away almost everything the estate earned him, and that's the checkmate. You can resent a rival prince, you can't resent a man giving 12,000 acres to grieving military families. He didn't just win the house, he erased the villain story entirely. Now, forever, one side of that land is a haven for the sick and the grieving, while the other side is remembered for measuring beds and building a wine room. That contrast is quiet, permanent, and devastating, and Charles saw it land the second the reading finished. William then slid the 3 keys across the table to Edward's lawyer, not Camilla. Archive first, then the manor, then a tiny chapel where Edward once visited with his grandmother. Even the order was a message. Records and memory mattered more than the mansion. The keys once hung beneath Charles's portrait, the man who thought the house was his to give. They ended in a plain wooden box beside a photo of the Queen Mother, with Edward's handwritten note, "Give this house to those in need." The keys traveled from the living king who believed he ruled the house, back to the dead queen who proved he never did. So who really won that morning? William, who gave up the house to control its fate? Edward, who took it and gave it all away? Or 2 women in 1999 who saw this family's future and sealed it with one cold sentence 26 years early? And don't forget Charles. This story is saddest if he's not the villain. He fought for Camilla through decades of scandal and hate, and the one thing he wanted to give her family, out of love, was never his to give. Everyone thought they were fighting over a house. They were really fighting a decision made by long-dead people who understood this family better than it understood itself. If this story pulled you in, hit like, drop a comment telling me who you think really won, and subscribe, because there's always another folder waiting to be opened.